Good afternoon from Tokyo, where IAFOR is holding our flagship conference on education. I am standing here with Dean Laura Bronstein. Good morning, thank you for being here. Could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. Laura Bronstein. I'm the Dean of the College of Community and Public Affairs at Binghamton University, and I'm also the founding director of Binghamton University Community Schools. So I'm here at the conference today talking about university-assisted community schools.
And you just gave a keynote presentation. Can you elaborate a little bit on your topic?
Sure. University-assisted community schools look at children in the context of their community and what are the barriers or supports for them to be successful in the classroom, and to look at the barriers and how can we minimize the barriers and maximize the resources to support their success. Because as we know, all youth don't have the same supports to be able to be successful in the classroom, and what community schools do is attempt to provide those supports so that all children have the same opportunity to not only succeed but to thrive.
You talk about the school being the social center. Well, what does that mean? What do neighborhoods and communities need today?
Yeah, the school brings together all families, even families that don't have children, have opportunities to have lectures at the school. Community schools have resources at the school. Some community schools have health centers at the school that communities members can take advantage of, whether or not they have children in the school. And so the school being the hub of the community, because it's only utilized for classes a certain amount of time, often like from 9 in the morning to 3 p.m. How else can we use that building? How can we use it as a center to bring people together?
You talk a lot about university-assisted education, and I'm going to flip it the other way around, and I'm going to ask, what about community-assisted education? What can communities contribute back to universities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the community and the university, I believe, are really symbiotic and really need to be integrated. I mean, as a dean at a university, my ability to be successful in the university is dependent upon the local community that I'm a part of. So for example, if I'm interviewing a new staff person or a new faculty person, in addition to talking about their expertise to do the job, people will ask me, well, what's the healthcare like in this community? What are the schools like? Is the community safe? And so what the community is has a real bearing on how I'm able to function as a university professor and administrator. And I want to live in a community that I like, that I think can thrive, that I think is good for people, and so I want to contribute to my community. And the community feels very similarly often about the university. Sometimes there's some negative feelings, but we try to repair those feelings so that community members will feel like the university is a place that's part of them and that they can take some ownership of and feel good about.
A lot of higher education institutions, especially in the US, we hear that a lot, are becoming ivory towers. They are ignoring local issues with an escapist attitude. How did this divide between the so-called towns and gowns happen?
You know, I think universities have a history of being elitist and being classist. I mean, I think about, I'm a social worker by training, and so Dorothy Height was a great social worker. She was a great civil rights leader, and she talked about how when she applied to Barnard College, which was part of Columbia University at the time, and this was the earlier part of the 20th century, she was told our quota of African Americans has been tapped, and so even though you're qualified, you can't come here. And a personal story is my father's cousin after World War II in the late 1940s. He applied to MIT and got a letter that said, a similar letter, you met the requirements, but our quota for Jews has been met, and so you can't come here. And so I think we have that history of, essentially, white Christian men had access to the university and others of us did not. back. And I think that's changed, but I think the notion is still there. And I think a lot of families feel like if they don't have the money to pay for the tuition, if they didn't go to a really excellent high school, that there are all these barriers for them to go. And I think there's lots of ways to get around that. But I think that we have to get that word out and to let communities of all people know that we are better when we're inclusive.
This is a question we will be asking during the forum tomorrow as an icebreaker, but do you like being referred to as doctor?
I mean, it's fine, but if people ask me, I say just call me Laura. I mean, I was a practicing social worker before I got my PhD, and so my orientation is a first name, so I mean, people call me all sorts of things, but I'm fine with Laura.
Is that common in the US for students to call their instructors or professors by their first name?
I think it is. I think that often students are respectful and will use, Dr. So-and-so. If a student writes an email to me, I'll just about always sign it Laura, but then they'll write back Dr. Bronstein, and that whatever's people's comfort level, I'm fine with.
Back to the community work. In Japan, a lot of this community work and programs happen in the primary and secondary education, not so much in the higher education institutions. Do you have an argument for the Japanese Ministry of Education on why higher education institutions in Japan should incorporate more community assisted education?
Yeah, I'm not going to be presumptive enough to advise the Ministry of Education in Japan, but I'll tell you why I believe it's important. And a lot of that, again, gets back to the university and community need to be symbiotic. They are symbiotic. When one thrives, the other thrives. And I also think that students, university students, it's good for them. There's data that shows that university students thrive when they're civically engaged, and so it's better for their education to be involved with the community. So I don't see any negatives to it. At the college that I work at, a lot of the faculty are engaged in community-engaged research, applied research. So they're doing research on issues that they want to have impact in the community. And so they'll often use like a participatory action approach and work with community members to come up with what are the questions we need to be looking at in this community to help the community be all it can be, and derive those questions together, and then the faculty member will conduct research and often go back to the community and say, these are some of the results. What do you think? Does this sound right? Do you have any other input? And so that the community feels truly engaged. And I think that's what makes better communities. It's certainly what makes better universities, and I think helps students to know that they are getting an education, not for something just in their head and stay in their head, but to really make the world a better place.
I think that would be very beneficial for Japan in general, because it is a very individualistic country. It is becoming. Our generation is not as communal as it used to be 2-3 generations before. I don't know if that's the same in the US.
Well, the US is a very individualistic country, but I think there's many of us that believe that the community, we need to embrace the community. And again, there's data that shows that that's good for university students.
Okay, which brings me to the last question. What is your future outlook on the relationship between the university and the community in the US and globally, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that those of us in the university have to embrace the community if we're going to make a difference and give our students the best education. So I hope that's the direction we're going in, because I think that's the direction we need to go in. I think that, I know that the students that I work with and the faculty I work with, when they're engaged in the community and they feel like they're making an impact, they feel better. And they're more engaged in their studies that way. So I hope it's a direction we're going in. I think at our university it is a direction we're going in, and I certainly hope it's a trend across the US and across the world.
So I hope if any Japanese educators watch this interview, they could get in contact with you or your institution. And you introduced your institution's model today in your presentation, so hopefully there can be some know-how exchange and collaboration.
Yeah, with pleasure. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm here at this conference because you do engage a global audience and see the value of that university and community engagement in an interdisciplinary and intercultural and international way.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.